The hall smelled like recycled air and anxiety. That's what Cadet 3rd Class Oren Peleth wrote in his personal log the morning of the drill. He kept a log, not because anyone made him, but because he'd grown up on a long-haul transport ship where his mother told him that people who write things down are harder to erase from history. He was 17. He took that seriously. He wrote, "The hall smells like recycled air and anxiety. 53 of us. Nobody's eating the nutrition paste. Voss from bunk 14 is trying to look calm, but his secondary eyelids keep flickering. The Terran girl Marin is eating her nutrition paste. All of it. She brought extra. She's reading something on a physical paper pamphlet. I don't know where she got paper. I didn't know paper came in pamphlets anymore." The Terran girl's name was Marin Solis. She was 17 years old, born in a small mountain town in the northern Andes range on a planet called Earth, a world that, at the time of this incident, had been a formal member of the Galactic Cooperative for exactly 11 years, long enough for humans to have cadets in training academies, not quite long enough for anyone else to stop being surprised by them. Marin had been at Station Vanther 7 for 8 months. She was the only human in Class 9. She was not the top cadet. She wasn't the fastest runner, didn't score highest on tactical simulations, didn't speak the most languages. She sat somewhere in the comfortable middle of the academic rankings, which bothered her instructor, Drill Adjutant Heckes Vorn, in a way he couldn't quite name. He'd told her 3 times that she had untapped potential. She'd thanked him politely, and then gone back to whatever she'd been doing, which was usually eating something or reading something or sleeping with an efficiency that bordered on aggressive. She napped in odd moments. She ate constantly, nutrition paste, supplemental ration bars, extra protein tabs she'd requisitioned through a minor administrative loophole involving planetary dietary adjustment. She drank hot beverages with a devotion that the other cadets found baffling. Tea, mostly. Sometimes something she brewed herself from a pouch of dried plant matter she'd brought from home. She called it cocoa. She'd offered it to Voss from bunk 14 once. He'd tasted it, gone very still, and then quietly asked if he could have more. She'd given him more. That was Marin. The briefing that morning was delivered by Drill Adjutant Vorn himself, which was unusual. Normally, the pre-drill briefs were handled by sub-instructors. When Vorn walked into the hall, 52 non-human cadets sat up very straight. Marin looked up from her pamphlet, noted his expression, and went back to reading. Vorn was Velhari, tall, gray-skinned, with the faint bioluminescent ridge markings that in Velhari culture indicated senior military rank. He had 40 years of service. He'd run this drill 18 times. He'd never had a cadet die in it, but he'd had 7 pulled out with hypothermic shock and 2 with psychological fracture events. He considered Class 9 to be, on balance, a mediocre cohort. He stood at the front of the hall and waited for silence that was already there. "Class 9, he said, "today you complete your cold environment survival certification. The blizzard drill is not a test of what you know. It is a test of what you do when what you know stops being enough." He pressed a control on the podium. The display behind him showed Station Vanther 7 Polar Sector, a vast expanse of ice shelf, crevasse fields, and wind-scoured plateau. A blinking marker indicated waypoint Sigma, the rally point they were all supposed to reach. The polar sector is currently experiencing a Category 3 atmospheric disturbance. Wind speeds are between 140 and 180 kilometers per hour. Visibility is near zero. Ground temperature is negative 56 degrees Celsius. With wind chill, it is effectively negative 83. He let that sit. Voss's secondary eyelids flickered again. You will be dropped in teams of 3 at scattered insertion points. Your team's equipment loadout will be standard survival pack, minus thermal generator. You have fire-starting materials, emergency rations for 48 hours, shelter polymer, communication device locked to emergency frequency only, and a compass calibrated to this sector's magnetic variance. No thermal generator, someone said. It was Cadet Dren Hosk, a Mavari, built like a collection of sharp angles held together by ambition. He was top of the class academically, and had never fully forgiven Marin for beating him at the topographic navigation module 3 weeks prior. No thermal generator, Vorn confirmed. You will generate heat through movement and proper shelter construction. This is a survival drill, not a comfort drill. Hosk absorbed this and returned to looking severe. Marin turned a page in her pamphlet. Vorn noticed. Cadet Solis, is there something in that document more relevant to today's exercise than my briefing? She looked up. Sorry, sir. I was reviewing cold weather shelter construction techniques. There's a section on using body heat pooling effectively in small enclosed spaces. Vorn studied her for a moment. You requested additional reading materials. I went to the physical archive, sir. There's a whole section on pre-cooperative survival literature, Earth sources mostly. A lot of it's very practical. Earth sources? Yes, sir. Vorn filed that away. The drill ends when all 3 members of your team reach waypoint Sigma, or when you activate your emergency beacon. Activating your beacon is not failure. It is a choice with consequences. You will complete an additional survival rotation at the end of the academic term, but you will be alive. He paused. Questions? Silence. Good. Insertion begins at 0900. Gear check at 0830. Dismissed. What Vorn did not say, what he never said, because it wasn't in the official brief and wasn't exactly sanctioned, was that he'd been watching the weather data all morning, and the Category 3 had shown signs, overnight, of escalating toward a Category 4. He'd flagged it to the station meteorological unit. They told him Category 4 was unlikely within the drill window. He'd noted their assessment and said nothing more. This would later be a significant point in the post-incident review. Document 1B. Personal log, Cadet Orin Peleth. 0847 Standard Gear Check Bay. I'm writing this fast because Marin just did something strange, and I want to get it down before we get on the insertion shuttle. She went through her standard gear check like everyone else. Equipment Officer Tasic went down the list: shelter polymer, rations, fire kit, compass, emergency beacon, thermal underlayer, outer shell, gloves rated to -70. She had all of it. Tasic checked it off. Then she opened a second bag. Tasic looked at it. That's not standard issue. No, sir, Marin said. It's my personal kit. Personal kits are not authorized for survival drills. The point is to operate with standard issue only. I know, Marin said. She'd been very patient about it, which I've noticed is something she does when she's made a decision she's not going to move on. I'm not bringing it as replacement equipment. I'm bringing it as supplemental comfort items. The regulation says no substituting standard gear. It doesn't say anything about adding to it, as long as total weight doesn't exceed 25 kilograms. She held out the bag. I'm at 23.8. Tasic looked at the bag like it had personally offended him. What's in it? She started listing. Extra thermal underlayer, chemical heat packs, 12 of them, high-calorie compact food, an emergency foil blanket, a Terran design, lighter than the standard polymer, 2 liters of water already heated and in insulated containers, tea, a fire-starting kit from a Terran camping supplier. She paused. Marshmallows. And marshmallows. For morale, she said, completely serious. Tasic opened his mouth, closed it, checked the regulation again on his data pad, checked her weight again and waved her through. She shouldered both bags and went await by the shuttle. I looked at Hosk. Hosk looked at me. She's going to be insufferable if she finishes first, he said. She's already insufferable, I said. she just doesn't know it. That's not true, actually. Marin isn't insufferable at all. She's just, I don't know how to explain it. She takes things seriously that other people don't, and she doesn't take seriously the things that stress everyone else out, like she's operating on a different frequency. We have the same insertion point. Team assignments, Peleth Hosk Solis. 9 minutes until shuttle. I don't know why I'm nervous. Marin brought marshmallows. How bad can it be? Editor's note. Cadet Peleth's optimism is recorded here without commentary. Excerpt from Automated Sensor Array, Polar Sector, Station Vanther 7. 0900 insertion window opens. Category 3 storm stable. Wind 147 km/h at surface. Visibility 18 meters. Ground temp degrees C. 0922 atmospheric pressure drop detected in sector Theta 9. Rate of change 0.4 millibars per minute. Flagged for review. 0945 pressure drop accelerating. Rate of change 1.1 millibars per minute. Storm intensification likely. Meteorological staff alerted. 10:03 wind speed at waypoint Sigma Ridge 201 km/h. Category 4 threshold breached. Automated alert sent to drill command. 10:07 drill command acknowledges alert. No immediate evacuation order issued. Monitoring situation. 10:31 wind speed sustained above 190 km/h across 70% of drill sector. Ground temp at waypoint Sigma approach, degrees C. Wind chill equivalent, -98 degrees C. 10:44 first emergency beacon activation detected. Team assignment, Cadets Thren Yaru Basque. 10:49 second emergency beacon activation. Team assignment, Cadets Vom Aren Des. 10:52 third emergency beacon. Team Civ Palar Kust. Beacon activations continue. See Appendix C for full log. 11:00 14 beacons activated within drill zone. Evacuation protocols initiated for affected teams. Review Board Chair, Admiral Tessani Vrat. Adjutant Vorn, let's begin with the timeline. When did you first understand the Category 4 escalation was occurring? VORN, when I received the automated alert at 10:07. VRAHT, and you didn't issue evacuation orders at that point. VORN, I was assessing. A Category 4 alert doesn't automatically mean conditions are unsurvivable. Cadets are trained for high-stress environments. The drill is meant to push limits. VRAHT, at what point did you understand the limits had been pushed past the appropriate boundary? VORN, pause when I looked at the beacon log at 11:15 and counted 31 activations. VRAHT, 31. VORN, yes. VRAHT, out of 53 cadets. VORN, 53, yes. VRAHT, and the final number. VORN, 52 beacon activations, by 14:30. VRAHT, 52 out of 53 cadets activated emergency beacons. VORN, yes. VRAHT, who was the 53rd? VORN, long pause Cadet Solis. VRAHT, the Terran. VORN, yes. VRAHT, she didn't activate her beacon. VORN, no. VRAHT, because. VORN, because she reached waypoint Sigma at 13:42 standard, under her own power, with both of her teammates. Silence in the record for approximately 6 seconds. VRAHT, in a Category 4 blizzard. VORN, in a Category 4 blizzard, -98 wind chill, near zero visibility. VRAHT, and when she arrived at waypoint Sigma, what was the first thing she said? VORN, clears throat. She asked the station crew if they had anything she could boil water in. VRST for tea. VORN for hot cocoa. She wanted to make hot cocoa. She had marshmallows in her pack. She was upset that some of them had gotten crushed during the drift crossing. VRHT. She was upset about marshmallows. VORN. About the marshmallows specifically, yes. She said, and I'm reading from the recovery crew log here, she said, I was going to give Hosk and Peleth the good ones for morale, but most of them are just powder now. The recovery crew noted she seemed more bothered by that than by the storm. VRHT. Quiet for a moment, Adjutant Vorn. In 40 years of service, have you seen anything like this? VORN. No, Admiral, I have not. VRHT. How did she do it? VORN. Pause, that, Admiral, is what we're trying to understand. I'm writing this from a heated cot with 3 thermal blankets on me and something warm in an IV, and I still feel cold. The medical staff say I'm fine. I believe them, but I still feel cold. Let me try to write down what happened while it's still clear. Marin told me to write it down. She said, you'll want to have it later. She was eating a ration bar while she said it, wrapped in a thermal recovery sheet, looking for all the world like she'd just come back from a brisk walk. She looked tired. That's the only thing. Her eyes had this quality of someone who'd been working hard for a long time and was just now allowing themselves to feel it. But she wasn't shaking. Hosk and I were both shaking for almost an hour after we got inside. She ate 2 ration bars and half a cup of cocoa. There was enough powder left for a half cup, she said, because most of the marshmallows had powderized. And then she went to sleep in the chair beside my cot and didn't move for 6 hours. Okay, from the beginning. The insertion shuttle dropped us at grid point 7, which is on the eastern approach to the Sigma Ridge. The other teams were scattered across the sector. I couldn't see any of them in the whiteout. The shuttle was gone in about 40 seconds, and then it was just us and the storm. The wind was something I don't have a proper reference for. I've been in bad weather on deep space transits, in pressure events, in training simulations. None of it was like this. It was a physical force, like something actively trying to push you off the planet. And the sound, it wasn't howling, not exactly. It was more like a sustained scream, so constant that after a while your brain stopped registering it as sound and just added it to the background of existing. Hosk and I looked at each other. Marin had already started walking. She had a rope from her personal kit, I think, a proper mountaineering rope, and she tied one end to her pack frame, handed me the middle section, and gestured for Hosk to take the other end. She didn't explain it. She just did it, and the fact that it made obvious sense in a zero-visibility environment meant that neither of us argued. We walked. Here's what I noticed about Marin in those first 30 minutes. She didn't fight the wind. That sounds simple, but it wasn't. My instinct was to push against it, to lean into it, to try to make progress against it directly. Every time a gust hit me, I braced and pushed. I was exhausted inside of 20 minutes. Marin moved differently. She wasn't fighting it. She was reading it somehow, stepping slightly sideways when the gusts came, timing her forward movement to the lulls, using the wind's own energy to help redirect her rather than just slamming herself against it. I watched her feet. I started copying her feet. It helped. Not completely, but enough. Hosk noticed too eventually. He's smart, he adapts. After 40 minutes, she stopped us behind a pressure ridge, a wall of compacted ice that broke the wind enough to hear each other speak. Team check, she said. Her voice was very calm. How are you both doing? Hosk, I'm functional. My left hand is losing sensitivity in the outer digits. Marin nodded, dug in her pack, handed him a chemical heat pack without looking. Activate it, hold it against those fingers for 2 minutes. Don't take your glove off. She looked at me. I'm okay, I said, tired faster than I expected. You're fighting it, she said. Stop fighting it. The wind isn't your enemy. The cold is your enemy. The wind is just weather. I don't know why that reframed it for me, but it did. She handed us each a wrapped block of food from her pack. It was dense and dark and tasted intensely sweet and fatty. I didn't know what it was. Caloric loading, she said. Your body is burning an extreme amount of energy staying warm. You have to feed it constantly or it starts eating your muscle tissue. She was already eating her own block. Your standard rations are low-cal for cold environments, I supplemented. This is a Terran food, Hosk said. He wasn't complaining, he was making an observation. Energy bar, Marin said. Earth formulation, military spec, designed for high-altitude cold weather operations. Earth has high-altitude cold weather military operations. She looked at him. We have a whole mountain range that people fight wars in at 4,000 meters altitude in winter. Yes. Hosk thought about that. How long until the storm eases? I asked. It won't, Marin said, or not in any time frame useful to us. It's getting worse. I noticed the pressure signature on the way in. She was checking her compass. We have about 6 kilometers to waypoint Sigma. At our current pace, maybe 4.5 hours. We need to keep moving. We should build shelter, Hosk said. Wait for extraction. Marin looked at him evenly. Extraction is a beacon activation, which is a tactical failure notation on our record. An extraction in a Category 4 event has its own risks. The shuttle can't fly safely in these gusts. They'll come when they can. We could be waiting 8 to 12 hours. Without a thermal generator, static shelter in this temperature for that long is survivable but not comfortable. She paused. We can make Sigma. You can't know that, Hosk said. I know my body, she said. I know yours because I've been watching both of you, and I have a plan for the crevasse crossing at the 4-kilometer mark. She folded the compass away. But it's a team decision. You can activate your beacons. I'll keep going. Hosk and I looked at each other. He said something in his native language that I didn't understand, but that sounded like acceptance wrapped in resignation. Fine, I said. We kept going. Note, the drill sector is equipped with distributed environmental sensors that provide incomplete video and audio data. Sensor coverage is approximately 40% of the sector. The following observations are based on available feed data for Grid Point 7 approach zone. 10:14. Sensor 7 North picks up 3 signatures in the Grid 7 Eastern approach. Team identified as Peleth/Hosk/Solis. Team is moving. Moving at steady pace despite wind readings of 163 km/h at that sensor position. 10:14. Note. This is notable. Other teams visible on sensors in nearby grid zones have either sheltered or activated beacons by this point. 7 beacon activations logged as of this writing. 10:31. Team 7 still moving. Wind has increased to 174 km/h. Team has stopped behind pressure ridge Gamma 4. They appear to be eating something. 10:31. Note. During a Category 4 blizzard, they are eating a snack. 10:45. Team 7 resumes movement after approximately 12-minute stop. The team has shifted formation. The Terran cadet is now leading more explicitly, with rope connecting all 3. The other 2 cadets have altered their movement style, less direct force approach, more lateral adaptation. They appear to be learning from watching her. 10:45. I am noting this because I have run this drill 14 times as an observer, and I have never once seen cadets actively coaching each other on movement technique during active Category 4 conditions. 11:12. Team 7 approaches the Cathari shelf boundary. This is a complex ice zone with multiple subsurface crevasses. Standard protocol in low visibility, high wind conditions is to divert to the long approach, which adds approximately 1.8 kilometers. Note, I have never seen a team attempt the direct crossing in Category 3 or above. The drift patterns alone make route finding extremely difficult. 11:15. I cannot see what's happening. Sensor 7 South is giving intermittent data. I can make out 3 signatures. They appear to be, it's difficult to read. They've stopped moving. 11:22, I can see them again. They're crossing the shelf, direct route. 11:22, I'm going to get coffee. My hands are shaking. I don't know why my hands are shaking. I'm inside in a heated room. 12:08, Sensor 7 West picks up the team on the far side of the Cathari shelf. All three signatures, all three moving. 12:08, note to file. The Cathari shelf crossing took approximately 50 minutes. The direct route is approximately 600 meters. At crossing pace, this implies extreme care and methodical movement across highly unstable ice, in near-zero visibility, in 180 plus km/h winds. All three cadets completed this crossing. 12:08, I went and told Adjutant Vorn. He was already watching the feed. He didn't say anything. He just sat very still. 13:42, Team Peleth/Hosk/Solis arrives at Waypoint Sigma Recovery Station. 13:42, final count at this time, 49 beacons activated. 3 cadets arrived at Sigma. All 3 are Cadet Solis' team. 13:42, the Terran asked if there was something she could boil water in. The Cathari shelf. I didn't write about that part last night because I was too tired, and honestly, because I'm not sure I've processed it yet. The Cathari shelf is a section of the ice pack where subsurface melt has created a labyrinth of hidden crevasses, gaps in the ice that can be anywhere from 2 meters to 30 meters deep. In normal visibility, you can navigate it using the standard marked route, which goes around most of the dangerous areas. In zero visibility, you can't see the markers. Marin knew about it because she'd read about it. Specifically, she'd read about crevasse crossing technique in a physical archive document from Earth's early mountaineering era. She told us about it while we were standing at the edge of the shelf, the wind trying to pick us up and deposit us elsewhere. On Earth, she said, there are glaciers in mountain ranges. People have been crossing them for a long time. The technique is called rope team travel. You keep the rope taut, you spread out enough that if one person falls, the other 2 can arrest the fall. You probe the surface before you put your weight on it. You move one person at a time. You have probes, Hosk said. She pulled 2 collapsible metal poles from her personal kit. She handed one to Hosk. He held it, he looked at her, he looked at the pole. How did you, he started. I requested them from the climbing equipment storage as part of a personal fitness regimen, she said. They were classified as recreational equipment and nobody questioned it. Hosk was quiet for a moment. You planned this. I prepared for it, she said. There's a difference. She paused, then seemed to relent slightly. I guess there might be a scenario where they were useful. You guessed that during a mandatory survival drill, in a known blizzard zone, you might need crevasse crossing equipment. I thought about what could go wrong, she said, and then I thought about what I'd need if it did, that's all. That's all, like it was nothing. Here is what the Cathari shelf crossing was actually like. It was the most frightening thing I have ever done, and I grew up on a transport ship with 3 engine failures under my belt. We moved in total silence except for the storm. Marin went first, probing every step, testing the ice for hollow sound and flex before putting her weight on it. When she was 4 meters ahead, she'd call back a specific sound, not words, just a clear tone she could project over the wind, and Hosk would advance to where she'd been. Then when Hosk was stable, I'd advance to where he'd been. Incremental, exhausting, absolute precision. Twice the probe went through the ice surface entirely, into hollow nothing. Both times Marin calmly redirected. She didn't flinch. She didn't make a sound of surprise or alarm. She just adjusted her route and kept going, like finding a hidden void beneath your feet was a minor inconvenience rather than a preview of dying. 40 minutes and approximately 600 meters of this. On the far side, Hosk sat down on solid ice and just sat there. He's not a person who shows much. The Mavari aren't demonstrative, but he sat there for about 90 seconds without moving, and that said everything. Marin was checking her compass. 2.5 kilometers, she said, mostly flat. We can do this in under 90 minutes. She handed us each another energy bar. Each, she said. Then we keep moving. You're both doing well. You're telling us we're doing well, Hosk said, from the ice where he was sitting. Because you are, she said. We wouldn't have gotten this far without you, I said. She looked at me in a way I found difficult to interpret. Not embarrassed exactly, more like she filed it away. We're a team, she said. That's what that means. Then she stood up and started walking toward Waypoint Sigma, and we followed her because at that point, following Marin Solis was simply the correct decision. Interviewer Sub-Inspector Tolan Vraz, Cadet Hosk, can you tell us in your own words what happened during the drill? Hask, I can, but I'd like to start by saying that the standard account understates what happened. The sensor data will show you the what. I'm going to tell you the how because that's what matters. VRAS, please proceed. Hask. When the shuttle dropped us, the conditions were already beyond what the drill brief had described. The Category 4 escalation was real and significant. My immediate assessment was that activation of emergency beacons was the rational choice. VRAS, but you didn't activate. Hask. No, because Cadet Solis had a different assessment and her reasoning was sound and her preparation was substantial. VRAS, describe her preparation. Hask. She brought equipment that wasn't in the standard issue. Not because the regulations prohibited it, but because she'd found a loophole. The regulations said you couldn't substitute standard gear, not that you couldn't bring additional items within the weight limit. She had rope, probes, heat packs, calorie-dense food, insulated water containers. She'd read the physical archive documents on cold weather survival technique from Terran sources. She knew the shelf crossing method, because her species has been crossing glacial ice fields for. He stopped. VRAS 4. Hask. I don't know exactly. A long time. She said something once during the crossing when I asked her how she learned to read the ice. She said her grandmother's grandmother used to cross the mountain glaciers in their region on foot in winter. That for her people, surviving that kind of terrain wasn't history, it was recent family memory. VRAS. Her family has personal experience with this kind of environment. Hask. Her species has species-level experience with it. That's the distinction. The rest of us, our species, have dealt with cold environments in ways that are distant from us now. We have climate control. We have thermal regulation. We've managed away the problem. The Terrans, they've been managing it personally and directly until very recently in their timeline. The woman's great-grandmother walked across glaciers. In the cooperative, we've had thermal stability tech for longer than their civilization has been literate. VRAS, are you suggesting that Cadet Solis' advantage was biological or cultural? Hask. I'm suggesting it was both. And I'm suggesting that we, the Academy, the cooperative, didn't account for that when we evaluated her. We put her in the middle of the academic ranking because she doesn't excel at abstract tactical simulation. But she excels at something the simulations don't test. She knows what to do with her body in conditions that are trying to kill her. That knowledge is in her somewhere, partly training, partly instinct, partly. He paused. Hask. She wasn't scared, Sub-Inspector. Not in the way the rest of us were. She was alert, completely alert, processing everything. But afraid? No. And I watched her. I watched her the whole time. There's a look people get when fear is running their decision-making and a look they get when something else is. She had the second look. VRAS, what was the something else? Hask. Concentration. Like it was a problem she intended to solve. She was going to get us to Waypoint Sigma. That was the outcome. Everything else was just logistics. Commander Varant. I am writing to provide informal notice of an incident at this station that may be of interest to your division, prior to the formal report submission through standard channels. During our Class 9 survival drill on the third cycle of the waning quarter, the drill conditions escalated beyond Category 3 parameters to Category 4, resulting in emergency beacon activations by 52 of the 53 participating cadets. The one cadet who did not activate a beacon, and who instead successfully completed the drill by reaching waypoint Sigma under her own power with her two teammates, was your division's candidate, Cadet Marin Solis of Earth. I want to be clear, this was not a close thing. By the time Cadet Solis reached waypoint Sigma, the remaining 52 cadets had been evacuated, the drill had been officially suspended, and our extraction teams were running active search patterns. We were not specifically tracking Cadet Solis' team at that point, because we had no reason to expect any team to still be mobile. The recovery crew at Sigma had not been briefed to expect arrivals. They were running heating systems and preparing debriefs when 3 cadets emerged from the blizzard. The recovery crew log notes that the first thing Cadet Solis said, upon entering the Sigma station, was a question about whether they had anything she could heat water in. As she had cocoa powder, she intended to prepare for her team. She also expressed regret about the condition of the marshmallows she'd brought. I am going to be direct with you, Commander. I have been running this station for 11 years. I have run this drill 18 times. I have never seen anything like this. The cooperative has, I think, been assessing Terran capabilities through the wrong lens. We have been looking at cognitive scores, tactical simulations, language acquisition rates. We have been thinking of humans as slightly slower to learn than the average cooperative species, but otherwise within expected parameters. I think we have been wrong. I think the parameters themselves are wrong. Cadet Solis scored in the middle of her class on every academic metric. On the one metric we hadn't thought to test, sustained physical and psychological functionality in extreme cold environment stress, she appears to be in a category by herself. I am not drawing broad conclusions, one cadet, one event. But I am suggesting that the Terran Integration Division may want to think carefully about what Terran candidates are actually capable of, and whether the current evaluation framework is seeing it. Please pass this along as you see fit. I slept 6 hours in the chair by Oren's cot. He kept asking if I wanted the cot. I didn't. The chair was fine. I was too tired to move and the chair was already there. I feel better now. Ate dinner. Real food, not rations. The station kitchen made something they called a recovery meal that was mostly protein and complex carbs and was warm, and that was all I needed from it. The medical staff checked me twice. They seemed confused that I wasn't in worse shape. They kept asking about my core temperature with the slightly baffled energy of people who expect a different number. I'm fine. I was cold during the drill, genuinely cold, really cold, in that way where the cold stops being a sensation and becomes a presence, but I managed it. Keep moving. Keep eating. Keep drinking something hot when you can. Stay dry. Protect your extremities. These are not advanced concepts. They are also, apparently, not concepts that translate directly to the other species here, which I did not fully understand until I watched Hosk and Oren struggling today. I need to think about this and write it down because I don't want to lose the specific shape of what I noticed. Hosk is, by every metric this academy uses, a better cadet than me. He scores higher. He's faster at simulations. His tactical reasoning in class is more sophisticated than mine. He's also braver than people give him credit for. He came across that shelf with me, every step, and he didn't quit even though I know he was scared. But when the storm got bad, his default was to find shelter and wait. That's not wrong. It's rational. But it was also going to get us stuck in a Category 4 with no thermal generator for 8+ hours, which was a different kind of risk he wasn't calculating. My default was to solve the problem of the distance between us and Sigma. Not the problem of the storm, you can't solve the storm, but the specific solvable problem in front of us. 6 kilometers, multiple hazards, team needs X, Y, Z to make it. I've been thinking about why that difference exists, and I think it's this. I grew up in a place where the mountain doesn't care about you. Not in a cruel way, in a neutral way. The mountain is not your enemy. The mountain is just there. The cold is not your enemy. The cold is just a condition. Your enemy is the decision to stop moving when you need to keep moving, or to panic when you need to think, or to forget to eat when your body is working this hard. My grandmother taught me that. Her grandmother taught her. The mountain range where my family comes from has been full of people who learned that lesson the hard way for 10,000 years. Some of them made it. Some of them didn't. The ones who made it left children. I am, in some way I can feel but can't fully articulate, the product of a long selection process for surviving mountains. The cooperative has been in space for so long that their relationship to hostile environments has become abstract. They control the temperature in their habitats. They have regulated atmospheres. They have not needed to personally negotiate with a blizzard in a very long time. We have been doing it until last Tuesday. I'm not better than Hosk. I want to be clear in my own log about this. He's smarter than me in most of the ways this academy measures. But I have a skill he doesn't, and it's not a trained skill exactly. It's more like a species-level familiarity with exactly this kind of problem. The problem of the cold and the wind and the terrain, and the distance and the body's limits, and what you can ask of it. I knew we could make Sigma because I knew what my body could do in that temperature, not from a textbook, from the inside. I hope Hosk is okay. He got quiet in the medical bay, not upset quiet, processing quiet. He gets that look when something has rearranged itself in his understanding, and he's categorizing the new arrangement. He'll be fine. Oren is already asking me to tell him about the Andes. He wants to know about the glaciers. I told him I'll tell him tomorrow. The marshmallows are mostly powder. I'm going to see if I can still make something out of them. Maybe if I mix the powder into the cocoa it'll be fine. Maybe better, actually. More even distribution. I'm writing this like the marshmallows are the main thing. They're not, I know they're not. But I wanted them to be better. I wanted to give Hosk and Oren the good ones. They walked across that shelf. They walked through that storm. They deserved the good marshmallows. I'll get them better ones next time. Interviewer, can you describe the medical status of the 3 cadets when they arrived at Waypoint Sigma? TORVEN, yes. I was on duty at Sigma when they came in. We weren't expecting anyone, the drill had been suspended. We'd processed 49 cadets through emergency protocols at that point. The last 3 were being tracked for extraction. And then 3 cadets just walked in. Cadet Peleth was in mild hypothermic stress. Core temp about 1.2 degrees below baseline. Some extremity sensation loss that resolved within the first hour of warming. He was fatigued and slightly hypoglycemic. Cadet Hosk was similar mild hypothermic stress, core temp about 1.8 below baseline. His secondary respiratory membrane was functioning at reduced capacity, which is a stress response in Mavari. He needed about 2 hours of warm environment recovery. Cadet Solis, the Terran, was cold. She had low peripheral temperature as expected, but her core temp was essentially normal, almost exactly baseline. Interviewer, how is that possible? TORVEN, I asked her that. She said she'd been eating constantly, which keeps metabolic heat generation high, and she'd been doing something she called layering, maintaining body heat through a combination of clothing strategy and movement management. She described moving in a way that generates internal heat without causing sweating, because sweating in that temperature is dangerous. You get wet, the wet freezes, you lose heat faster. Interviewer, that's fairly sophisticated thermal management. TORVEN, yes, but she didn't describe it as sophisticated. She described it as obvious. She seemed genuinely puzzled that I was treating it as noteworthy. She asked me if I had a pot she could borrow. Interviewer for the cocoa. TORVN. Yes, I found her a pot. She made hot cocoa. She gave some to both her teammates before she let me run a proper exam on her. Interviewer. She prioritized her teammates' cocoa over the medical exam. TORVEN. She said, and I wrote this down because I thought it was worth having on record, she said, they need the sugar and the warmth, and honestly the morale hit is as important as the physical, so this is actually medical too. I'm just more efficient at the moment, so I should be the one doing it. She's not wrong, medically speaking. Hot sweet liquid after cold stress exposure is a legitimate therapeutic intervention. The morale component is harder to quantify but real. She was also right that she was more functional at that moment, and therefore the appropriate person to provide care to her teammates before receiving care herself. Interviewer. What was your overall assessment of her physical condition? TORVN. Honestly, I've seen marathon runners after a race who were in worse shape than she was after 5 hours in a Category 4 blizzard. I think she was tired. Genuinely, deeply tired in the way that follows sustained extreme effort. But she'd managed herself so well during the event that the recovery burden was minimal. She ate 4 ration bars, 2 bowls of the meal we had prepared, and approximately a liter of fluid over the first 2 hours. And then she slept in a chair for 6 hours. When she woke up, she asked if there were any marshmallows in the station stores. Interviewer. Were there? TORVEN. We had some compressed shelf-stable ones. I gave them to her. She lit up like, I don't know, like a child receiving an unexpected gift. She put them carefully in a sealed pouch to take back to her room. Interviewer. You found that memorable? TORVEN. I found the whole day memorable. But yes, that specifically. She'd survived something that broke 52 other cadets, and her primary emotional investment in the aftermath was the marshmallows. She wanted to have good ones for her teammates. I've been a station medic for 12 years. I'm not easily surprised by people anymore, but she surprised me. Note, Cadet Hosk submitted this log voluntarily to the review board with the notation, for the record. It is included here unedited. I am going to record something that may read as sentimentality, but which I believe is factually significant. At the 4-hour mark of the crossing, with approximately 1.5 kilometers remaining to waypoint Sigma, I experienced a functional decision failure. This is the correct terminology, a point at which the cost-benefit analysis of continued movement versus stopping became, in my physiological and psychological state at the time, essentially impossible to resolve. I was cold. I was exhausted. The wind had been at 180 kilometers per hour for over an hour. My reasoning processes were degraded. I stopped moving. I did not activate my beacon. I simply stopped moving, which is arguably more dangerous than activating a beacon, because a stationary unheated body in that temperature loses core temp at a measurable and significant rate. I don't know exactly how long I stood there. Not long, I think. But long enough. Marin came back. The rope between us went taut, and then she was walking back toward me, against the wind, which at that point was not trivially achievable. She came back to where I was standing, and she stood in front of me, close enough that I could see her face inside her hood. She was tired. I could see that. Her face had the quality of someone who has been managing a significant physical challenge for a long time and is still managing it, but her eyes were clear and focused. She didn't say, "You need to keep moving." She didn't say, "We're almost there." She said, "Hey, when we get back, I'm going to make you the best cup of hot cocoa you've ever had. I have good marshmallows." That's what she said. I said, "They're mostly powder." She said, "The powder is fine. It's still good, trust me." And then she started walking again, and I started walking because That was the only thing to do after that. I have thought about this interaction several times since returning to the station. I have tried to understand why that specific exchange was the one that resolved my functional decision failure when several more logical alternatives, accounting our progress, estimating time to completion, reviewing risk of stationary exposure, would not have. My current hypothesis is this. The offer of something specific and small and warm was more functionally useful to my decision-making than any rational argument about survival probability, because what had failed in me was not the rational system but something further down, something more primitive. The thing that makes you put one foot in front of another when the rational arguments have been processed and become noise. That thing responds to hot chocolate and marshmallows in a way it doesn't respond to estimated survival window at current pace. Marin knew this, not consciously perhaps, possibly it was instinct, possibly it was cultural knowledge so deeply embedded she doesn't experience it as knowledge at all. Either way, she understood what I needed in that moment. She gave it to me, and I walked the rest of the way to Sigma. I have not told her about this part. She would probably tell me I was fine, that anyone would have kept going, that it was just a cold day and we had a plan. She would be correct in the ordinary sense. But she would also be missing what I'm trying to say. She brought me back. That's what I'm trying to say. Excerpt Section 4. Notable Performance Class 9 Blizzard Drill. The performance of Cadet Marin Solis, Terran Earth. Cadet Registration ITC 741, in the Class 9 Blizzard Drill merits specific and extended notation. Cadet Solis demonstrated the following competencies during the drill, none of which are formally assessed by current ICTA performance metrics. Pre-event preparation. Solis identified and utilized a regulatory loophole permitting supplemental personal kit within weight limits. Her additional equipment, rope, probes, chemical heat packs, calorie-dense food supplements, insulated fluid containers, fire kit, Terran design emergency foil blanket, was directly responsible for the team's ability to complete the drill. She had sourced information from the station's physical archive, Terran mountaineering and cold weather survival documents, and incorporated that knowledge into her preparation. This represents proactive independent research prior to a high-stress event, a quality that our standard pre-drill assessments do not capture. Movement management. Solis demonstrated a wind navigation technique that reduced energy expenditure by an estimated 40% compared to direct force approach. She transferred this technique to her teammates via observation and brief instruction during the drill, without halting movement for a formal teaching session. The other two cadets adapted within approximately 30 minutes. Caloric and hydration management. Solis maintained her team's energy levels through consistent, enforced caloric intake at rest stops. She had anticipated the metabolic demands of cold environment sustained movement and had preloaded appropriate food. This prevented the energy crashes that contributed to beacon activations in other teams, based on medical reports from those teams. Crevasse navigation. Solis led a direct route crossing of the Cathari Shelf under Category 4 conditions using Terran mountaineering rope team technique. This is not taught at ICTA. She learned it from archive documents and physical experience in her home environment. The crossing added approximately 50 minutes to the team's transit time, but was considerably faster than the alternative long route and eliminated the shelter weight option, which had its own risks. Team morale management. Multiple testimony accounts Peleth, Hosk, indicate that Solis managed team morale through specific, concrete, forward-looking small rewards. Specifically, the promise of hot cocoa with marshmallows upon arrival at Waypoint Sigma. This appears to have been a critical intervention at least once for Cadet Hosk at a point of functional difficulty. The mechanism is psychologically straightforward: concrete near-term reward, positive sensory association, evidence of care and planning, but the timing and delivery were effective. Physical self-management. Solis arrived at waypoint sigma with a core temperature essentially at baseline, having managed her thermal output through movement, consumption, and layering technique throughout the 5-hour transit. This is a skill that, based on her own account and Cadet Hosk's testimony, is not easily taught through simulation. It requires an embodied familiarity with cold environment physiological management that appears to be culturally and experientially transmitted in Terran populations from cold environment regions. Recommendation: the ICTA Performance Assessment Framework should be reviewed with specific attention to competencies related to cold environment survival, sustained physical environment navigation, and embodied team management. These competencies are currently not assessed and were critical to the only successful completion of this drill. The current framework places Cadet Solis in the middle academic tier. The drill outcome suggests this assessment is significantly incomplete. I also recommend that the Marshmallow situation be formalized in some way. I am not certain how, but it was important, and importance should be formalized. Adjutant H. Vorn. Marin made hot cocoa tonight in the common room. She got real marshmallows from the station stores, the Terran kind, which are apparently a very specific texture, and which the compressed shelf-stable ones approximate but don't quite get right, she said, though she also said they were fine and good enough, and put them in anyway. She made it for the whole class, all the ones who were still here anyway. Some people had gone to the medical center on the main hub for observation, and a few had gone home for brief leave. But there were about 30 of us, and she made enough for 30. She brought out the pot from somewhere. I think she charmed Medic Torvin out of it. And she had a bag of the cocoa powder from her kit that hadn't gotten wet, and she heated the water and mixed it carefully and poured it into whatever cups and containers people had. The common room smelled like something I didn't have a name for until she told me. She said, "This is what kitchens smell like in winter, in cold places, when people are trying to get warm." Hosk sat in the corner. He had his cup. He was very quiet, the way he gets when something has settled in him and he's letting it settle. There are people in this class who almost didn't come back from that drill. Cadet Thren told me he activated his beacon after 11 minutes. 11 minutes. He said the wind hit him, and his rational calculation said the risk was too high, and he activated. He's not wrong to have done that. The risk was too high, by any reasonable standard. The Category 4 made the drill a different event than the one we'd been briefed for. And 51 other cadets agreed with him, in the end. I look at Marin and I try to understand the difference. Not to make her seem superhuman, she's not. I spent 5 hours next to her and she was tired and cold and human in all the normal ways. She has bad days. She complains about the food sometimes. She naps aggressively. But she walks into a Category 4 blizzard and she thinks, "I'm going to solve the problem of the distance between here and there." And she does. She said something once a few weeks ago that I've been thinking about since. We were talking about why humans joined the cooperative, and I asked if it was for the technology, the access to other worlds, the resources. She thought about it for a minute and then she said, partly. But also, honestly, it's the community. Humans are social. We've always done better with more people to work with. She said, the hard stuff is less hard with more people. I thought about that on the shelf. One person probing the ice, one person watching, one person anchoring the rope between us. It's a simple idea, but the way she lives it, the cocoa, the marshmallows, the rope she tied before I even thought to ask for one, it's not theory for her. It's just what she does. She's passing cups around the common room now. She's asking people how they're doing and listening to the answers, and the people who had a hard drill, and that's almost everyone, are talking more than I expected. The room is warmer than the heating system alone would make it. Hosk just said something to me across the room. Quietly, he said, "She's doing it again." I asked what he meant. He said, managing morale, the whole room. I looked around. He's right. She's doing the same thing she did on the shelf, specific and small and warm, making it not abstract, making it just this cup, this room, this specific night that is over and done with and warm. She noticed us watching her. She called across the room, "Oren, do you want more?" "Hosk, you look like you need more." Hosk said in his most dignified voice, "I would accept more." She grinned. That's what I want to end this entry on, actually. That she grinned. Because it's just a grin, it's nothing grand. It's a person happy to hand someone a cup of warm cocoa in a common room after a bad week. But she crossed a glacier for us. She came back for Hosk when he stopped. She led us across an ice field that 52 other people gave up on. And the thing she seems most satisfied about tonight is that the marshmallows turned out okay. Marin, I don't say this kind of thing easily. I want you to know that. I know what you did on the approach to Sigma. I know what I looked like when I stopped and what you came back to find. You didn't make it a thing. You didn't note it in your log. I checked with Oren, not because I don't trust you, but because I wanted to know. You didn't tell anyone. You said it was hot cocoa and marshmallows, and you started walking and I started walking. I've been thinking about that for 6 days. I'm still thinking about it. My species has a word. It's not translatable exactly, but the closest approximation is the weight that a person carries forward so you don't have to. It's what you call it when someone takes something from you, not permanently, but long enough to let you take the next step. You took the weight, just for a moment, and then I could walk again. You do this for people. I've watched you do it in small ways for the entire 8 months I've known you. I don't know if you know you're doing it. I think you might not, because for you it's just what you do. It's the rope you tie before anyone asks, the food you hand out, the cocoa at the end. I wanted to tell you that I see it, and that it matters more than the tactical score. Husk. P.S. The marshmallows were good. You were right. Husk. Thank you for writing that. I'm going to tell you something true. I did know. About what happened at the 4-kilometer mark. I knew you were going somewhere that would be hard to come back from without a specific thing to come back toward. My grandmother called it the drift. Not the snow drift, the mind drift. The moment when the cost of continuing starts to feel larger than the cost of stopping, and your brain starts looking for permission to stop. She said the way to counter it was to give someone a very specific and small and real thing to walk toward. Not "you can do this," that's too abstract. Something real, something particular, something that exists and is waiting for them. The cocoa was real, the marshmallows were real, I had them in my bag, they were actually there. She also said the secret is that you have to mean it. If you're offering something just as a tactic, people feel that. You have to genuinely want to give them the warm thing. And I did. I really wanted to give you the good marshmallows, Hosk. I was genuinely sad that they were mostly powder. Anyway, I also want to say you made it. I pointed at the warm thing and you moved toward it, but you moved. You crossed that shelf. You came out the other side. That was you. Don't make me too big in the story. Marin. P.S. I have a source for better marshmallows. I'm putting in a supply requisition. Don't tell Adjutant Vorn. Following a full review of the Vanther 7 incident and related testimony, I want to raise 3 specific points for committee consideration. First, our survival drill framework does not currently include any assessment of what I am going to call embodied environmental competency. The ability to physically manage one's body and team in a hostile environment using learned physiological self-regulation. Cadet Solis demonstrated this competency at a level that exceeded all other candidates in the drill. It is not measured by any of our current metrics. We should consider how to assess it. Second, Cadet Solis' preparation included material she sourced from our own physical archive, Terran mountaineering and cold weather survival documents. She read them on paper, in a physical format, before a high-stakes event, and then applied them in conditions for which there was no simulation available. This is exactly the kind of self-directed preparation we claim to want in ICTA cadets. We did not know she was doing it. We had no system to recognize or reward it. We should consider how to change that. Third, and this is the one I find most difficult to reduce to a curriculum recommendation, but I'll try. The morale management element of this incident was decisive. It was not sophisticated in theory. It was sophisticated in execution. It required understanding of what specific people in specific conditions need in specific moments, combined with the foresight to have actually brought what they need. Cadet Hosk's private testimony describes a moment of functional failure that was resolved not by a rational argument, but by the offer of a very specific small warm thing, and then the delivery of that thing upon arrival. Hot cocoa, marshmallows. I am aware that this sounds trivial. I am also aware that it worked where 52 other cadets' training did not. I am not sure what to do with that curriculary, but I believe it belongs in the record. Coordinator Eleni. P.S. I reviewed Cadet Solis' current academic ranking. She is 27th out of 53. I think we are not asking the right questions. Note, the board requested Cadet Solis' own account. The following is her direct testimony, transcribed verbatim. Review Board Chair Admiral Vrat, Cadet Solis. Thank you for your time. We've heard from several people about what happened during the drill. We'd like to hear from you directly, starting from the beginning. Marian, okay, yes. The insertion was at grid point 7, eastern approach to the Sigma Ridge. I already knew the route from the archive maps. I'd identified the Cathari Shelf as the main navigation challenge, which is why I brought the probes and rope. When the storm came, I was glad I had both. The Category 4 escalation was noticeable from about the first 30 minutes. The pressure signature was different from the Category 3 brief. I've been in mountain weather my whole life. I knew the shape of a worsening storm. When you grow up in the Andes, weather literacy is just something you develop. So I updated my estimate. We'd be dealing with worse than the brief said, and we needed to adjust pace and strategy to match. I decided to keep moving rather than shelter because I had the equipment to do it. I knew our physical capacity from training, and I'd done a rough calculation on shelter static risk versus movement risk at that temperature. Movement risk was higher per minute but lower across the full event timeline if we could maintain appropriate caloric intake and manage the crossing. The shelf crossing, I want to be clear that it was manageable. It was very difficult and it required extreme care. But it was manageable. The technique is old. People have been doing it on Earth for hundreds of years. The novelty, if there was any, was applying it here, but ice behaves the same way everywhere. That was a guess, and it was right. VRAHT, you guessed. MARN, I assessed and then I committed, yes. VRAHT, based on your prior experience. MARN, and the physics. Ice doesn't change because you're on a different planet. Cold is cold. Wind is wind. The physics are consistent. VRAHT, the marshmallows. A pause. MARN, you want me to explain the marshmallows. VRAHT, I want to understand them. MARN, so, hot cocoa in a cold environment is it's multiple things at once. It's calories, which matters because your body is burning a lot of energy to stay warm. It's warmth, which has direct physiological benefit after cold stress. It's sugar, which has immediate energy and mood impact. And it's familiar. It's a familiar thing in an unfamiliar situation. The marshmallows are specifically for the third and fourth category. They're not nutritionally important. They're important because, I don't know how to put this exactly, but in the region where I grew up, when someone came in from the cold, you gave them something warm and sweet. It was how you said, you made it back. You're here. It's okay now. The marshmallows are part of that message. Hosk and Oren didn't know that history, But warm, sweet things communicate something that crosses species, I think. Something fundamental. The thing I was sad about was that I'd had these really good ones, a specific brand from home, that a friend sent in a package. And they got crushed in the drift crossing when I fell once and the pack took a hit. So they were powder. And I really wanted to give them the good ones because they'd done something hard. They'd earned the good ones. I ended up finding acceptable ones at the station. It was fine. VRAHT, quietly you fell during the drift crossing. MAREN, once, on the approach to the shelf, a gust caught me sideways. I managed the fall, rolled into it, and used the rope to arrest. Standard technique. VRAHT, you fell in a Category 4 blizzard and didn't tell your teammates. MAREN, it was managed. No reason to escalate their stress level. They had enough to deal with. VRAHT, another pause, Cadet Solis. I want to ask you something that isn't in the official review scope. MAREN, okay. VRAHT, were you ever afraid? Silence in the record. MAREN, I was cold. I was tired. I was worried about Hosk at the 4-kilometer mark. I could see he was getting to a difficult place. I was worried about the shelf crossing working the way I'd calculated. But afraid. She thought about it. The transcript notes a pause of approximately 8 seconds. I come from a planet that has been trying to kill us since we got here. Earthquakes, hurricanes, ice ages, heat waves, we've had all of it. There are parts of my planet that are still basically hostile wilderness. We've been navigating that for 100,000 years. That storm was cold and it was difficult and it was trying to stop us. But it wasn't personal. It didn't know we were there. I was walking through conditions my species has been walking through since before anyone in this room was born. Was I afraid? No, I was busy. I compiled this account because events of this kind have a way of becoming legends before they become understood. The broad outline, 52 cadets activated beacons, 1 Terran walked out, has traveled through the Academy network faster than any formal report could. In some tellings, the Terran is already something close to myth, cold immune, fear-proof, supernatural. She is not supernatural. I've read her personal logs, I've spoken with her teammates, I know what she is. She is a 17-year-old from a mountain town in South America who grew up walking in cold places, who had a grandmother who taught her how to move in wind, who read mountaineering documents in a physical archive because she wanted to be prepared, who brought marshmallows for morale and was genuinely, specifically sad when they got crushed. She is someone who, when her teammates stopped moving in a Category 4 blizzard, came back for him and said, "Hey, I have good marshmallows waiting for you at the end." And he walked. That's the story. Not a special biological ability, not superhuman tolerance, not alien physiology or military-grade augmentation. A girl from a cold mountain, a species that has been surviving hostile places for 100,000 years, 10,000 years of cultural knowledge about how to keep moving when moving is very hard, and the specific foresight to bring something sweet for the end of a difficult day. 52 cadets measured the storm and found it too large. She measured the distance and found it crossable. That's all. She's now in her 2nd year at ICTA. She is still ranked in the middle 3rd academically. The curriculum committee is still debating how to capture what she's actually good at in a formal metric. They haven't figured it out yet. She's still making cocoa in the common room. The marshmallows she brings now are better. She found a supplier, apparently, through a chain of supply requisitions that Adjutant Vorn has chosen not to examine too closely. She offers them to anyone who's had a hard week. Most people take her up on it. Last month, Hosk organized a cold weather navigation seminar using techniques she'd taught him on the shelf. He asked her to co-present. She said yes, and then made sure there was cocoa at the end. I asked her, when I interviewed her for this archive, whether she understood what she'd done during that drill, and what it had come to mean to the people who were there. She thought about it for a while. She said, "I got my team to Waypoint Sigma. That's what the drill was for." I said, "That's all." She said, "And the cocoa?" "The cocoa was good in the end, once I found the right marshmallows." She smiled. I wrote it down.